Senator Dunavant. Senator Peake. Senator Hashmi.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first bill, and perhaps our only bill today, is Delegate Bulova, if you can present your bill.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So this is House Bill 389. It basically puts some final touches on our multi-year effort with regard to early childhood education. Ball got rolling with a study in 2019, and then in 20 and 21, we put in legislation to essentially consolidate early childhood education into the Department of Education and also create a statewide improvement system. So what this bill does is two things. First, it creates a new child care subsidy overpayment fund. And so every once in a while, the state will go ahead and do overpayment to providers. When that happens, it goes back to a special overpayment fund. Right now, though, it goes back to the overpayment fund for the Department of Social Services, which is where they used to be. Now that it's over to the Department of Education, it makes much more sense to go ahead and put it in under the Department of Education and have it be used for educational purposes. So that's the first part of that. The second one is it directs the Board of Education to establish a network of regional entities to serve as your local hubs for early childhood education. And so I think we kind of inherently know that in order for these things to be most effective, they can't all be managed from Richmond. Just like CSBs and PDCs, you go ahead and establish these regional entities. Those have already grown organically, but they don't cover statewide. And so that would be what the second part of this does, is establish a system of regions, ready regions in order to go ahead and deliver early childhood education services. And so that's actually stuff that can be funded through the federal block grant program, so it doesn't have an impact on us at the state. That's what the bill does, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions from committee? And I know you have some supporters in the room, but if you'll just raise your hand if you're in support of this legislation. Thank you. Any opposition?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to report. Second. Do we have to re-refer or no?
Well, it'll be reported to the full committee.
That's right.
Yes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Your bill is going to be reported or recommended for reporting in the full committee next Thursday.
Appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for running over here. I know Delegate Brewer is trying to get over here too during the break, so if we can sit tight for a little bit.
May I just say again, Madam Chairman, well done today.
Oh, thank you.
We're in such better shape.
Yes, yes. I've been reading some of the comparisons and
Oh, yeah.
interesting.
I know. That's what we said this morning.
How far are they on the budget today?
Oh, they just need to let it go.
It's been moved and seconded that there is a
Equal
second, right?
Equal second.
Okay, it's been recommended that we report HB 1064, or recommend for reporting, HB 1064. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And so the bill is going to be recommended for reporting.
You can summarize the testimony that was given, they'll know what's happening.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience in waiting. I know it's been a long afternoon, and it's all the fault of the House of Delegates. We in the Senate understood the assignment. We wrapped up quickly, and we got here quickly. But thank you. What we have decided, because you have waited so patiently, that though the patron of the bills will not be here, we will hear public testimony, make note of the comments that have been shared, and that this way next week in full committee, when the patrons come to present the bills, we can also summarize some of the public comments that have been made. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and I will just move in order of the bills then. So the first bill that we have, and I should say, I'm sorry, the first bill is HB 89, patroned by Delegate Walker. That is going to be re-referred to Judiciary on recommendation. So is not, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
So we will send HB 89 to Judiciary. The next bill is HB 127, and that is patroned by Delegate Davis. It is the governor's school recommendation changing the admission process. If anyone is here to speak in favor, if you will just line up and come and speak at the mic, we will give 5 minutes total for each side. Please come on up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jillian Balo. I'm the State Superintendent, and I'm here on behalf of the Governor's Office. This is a Governor's bill, as you know, and I certainly was prepared to follow Delegate Davis's eloquence in describing the bill, but so I won't even try. Suffice to say that this permits traditional academic success factors to be considered for entrance into governor's schools, and also just eliminates and reaffirms that there is no place for discrimination, proxy discrimination for admissions, and seeking any race, religion, or sex information for admissions other than what is expressly permitted and required by federal law.
Thank you.
And I'm speaking in favor, of course.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, if you want to take
Questions?
questions. Yes, we can do that, certainly. Thank you.
Can you tell me precisely what that means?
Madam Chair and Senator, I certainly wish that Delegate Davis was here to describe the inner workings of his bill, and I would direct you to ask that question of him. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anybody here to speak in opposition to HB 127? Okay, thank you, and we'll have a total of 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, Vicki Kitts with the Virginia Education Association. We're in opposition of this bill because we believe that the General Assembly should be very cautious and not legislate, but allow governor, school governing boards to make these decisions. The VEA has an issue with the narrow definition of traditional academic success factors. This bill does not value diversity, and we have an issue with the definition of proxy discrimination. The VEA understands that there is current ongoing litigation around the issue of admission policies of governor schools, and we further believe that the bill will stifle opportunities rather than expand opportunities for students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I keep seeing the term proxy discrimination, and I have never seen a definition. Do you know what that is?
I do not have the definition, but I can look it up, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
She has it, yeah.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Zoe Aquino from Humke Center. And I'm actually going to be ceding my time to deliver testimony on behalf of Dr. Mateo Carter, who unfortunately had to leave earlier this afternoon, but I would like to read his testimony instead. So Dr. Mateo Carter is an alumnus of Maggie Walker Governor's School, class of 1995. urging, along with the anti-racist alumni of Maggie Walker, to oppose HB 127. Within his words, he says, "This bill is not necessary. No academic standards were lowered with the admissions changes at both TJ and Maggie Walker. When Maggie Walker dropped its test due to COVID, they tripled the percentage of black students admitted, and the school's overall GPA increased for the class of 2021. TJ maintained its same GPA while increasing its admitted students who qualify for free and reduced lunch from 1% to 25%. This bill unconstitutionally ties the hands of local school boards already using school caps, zip codes, and socioeconomic status to build diverse classes and prevent racial isolation, two goals that the Supreme Court of the United States has affirmed as compelling state interests. Plus, there is still pending litigation that would put local school boards in an impossible position if the federal judge follows federal law. This bill marginalizes all students who don't have the resources to hire a tutor to master a standardized test. It masks a plain reality, the problem of modern-day segregation, by preventing the collection of data. The last-minute amendment from the House about middle school curriculum is nothing more than an unfunded mandate. And bottom line, public schools are not a commodity. They're here to build our students, our residents, and reflect the diversity of our region. So please vote no to HB 127. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of course. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Stacey Haney on behalf of the School Boards Association. We also oppose this bill. I can't say it any better than the two speakers who spoke before me, so I won't try. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Madam Chair, members of the committee. Bev Lammy with Henrico Schools, and we certainly applaud and support every effort to try to make sure that we have diversity represented with our students. We have an issue, and we've been to see Delegate Davis's staff about it, with the proxy discrimination definition. We try in Henrico, not try, we do. We take candidates from every one of our middle schools. We make sure that that's part of the way we choose the students that are going to Maggie Walker. And with the definition of proxy discrimination, we would not be able to so select those students to have not really priority, but we want to balance the fact that we have students coming from all over the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee? And I think you addressed one of the issues of proxy discrimination. The bill also takes out the localities as a qualifier, and we know that local school boards actually help fund and support the governor's schools, and so that creates one of the issues and concerns. So thank you very much. Okay, really appreciate the public testimony for that previous bill, HB 127. The next bill is HB 340, and this particular bill directs the Board of Education to establish two pathways for the Advanced Studies High School Diploma and associated diploma seals for the students who are following the pathways. One requires that the CTE field, advanced coursework in the CTE field, but does not require coursework in a world language. And the other pathway requires advanced coursework in a world language, but does not require coursework in a CTE field. I know I personally have received many, many emails, particularly from our teachers of world languages and other individuals who are concerned with the removal of world language as an option. So are there any here who wish to speak in favor of the bill? And that is HB 340, patroned by Delegate Davis. Are there any here who wish to speak in opposition? And we'll do 5 minutes on this side. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Shinicariello, and I'm the advocacy chair for the Foreign Language Association of Virginia. I'm also speaking on behalf of Global Virginia, whose representative had to leave, and of the World Language Supervisors Organization as well. And I know I dropped off their statements to all of your offices yesterday, and you've also been emailed, I believe, statements. So I will just simply summarize basically what we've been telling you all along, which is that we certainly understand the need for CTE. And what we want to do is establish global global citizens, career ready. That's CTE and the skills one gets in a world language class. So separating this out into two separate diplomas creates an opposition between the two fields that are both necessary for all Virginians. And a lot of the information that we sent you from Global Virginia and some of the other people who have done research in this field point out that Virginia, which we all know is multilingual and multicultural, and of course we're in a global economy. And we all need the ability to work cross-culturally, and that's one of the skills one learns in a world language class. But also, some of the statistics I sent you talk about the fact that it's precisely the fields in which people prepare with CTE that people need to be multilingual now. Construction, manufacturing, healthcare, and technical services have all become world competitive multilingual fields. So our students need that. And so if they're going to get an advanced diploma, they need the world language component. So the Foreign Language Association of Virginia and all the groups I represent believe that you can't have an advanced diploma without world languages. That's basically the issue. We also find that this is unnecessary to change the advanced diploma qualifications because we've received numerous letters, and I hope some of them made their way to you, from parents of children who pursued CTE and world languages and got the current advanced diploma, which has allowed them to do all the things that you can do with an advanced diploma and still have good careers in all these fields. So it's unnecessary. It's taking Virginia backwards in its effort to create global career-ready citizens.
Thank you.
And that's, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, but we really oppose this bill.
Thank you. I know I've received many, many emails and appreciate the outreach. Yes, sir.
Hello, I am
Hello.
Justin Beeman, and I am a former world language educator, and I am just here to say that I am also in opposition of this bill. I personally know how important it is for students to gain that global perspective in a world language classroom, and would just like to see that that continues for all of our students to be global citizens and to be able to have an outside perspective of maybe what they have currently been exposed to.
Thank you, sir. What language did you teach?
Spanish.
Spanish, wonderful. Were there any questions from committee members? I'm sorry I didn't ask earlier. Okay, well, thank you very much, and we have already heard HB 389 from Delegate Boulevard. The next bill is HB 511, and this is patroned by Delegate March, and this is concerning students who are receiving home instruction and their opportunity to participate in interscholastic programs. This particular legislation seeks to address the prohibition. It would prohibit public schools from joining an organization governing interscholastic programs that does not deem eligible for participation a student who receives home instruction, has demonstrated evidence of progress for 2 consecutive years, or is in compliance with the immunization requirements, is a person of school age for whom the public school is free, or has not reached the age of 19 for that academic year. And so I believe there's considerable interest in this bill, and we will do 5 minutes pro and 5 minutes against. And so are you speaking in favor? Okay, please come on up. Are you the only one speaking in favor? So you have, you're speaking in favor as well. So if you can stand here that we have a sense. 5 minutes total for each side. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Steve Rossi. I represent the Family Foundation of Virginia, and thanks for this opportunity. First and foremost, I'd like for you all to think of this bill as a local option bill and a fairness bill. There are counties that don't want this and don't want this policy, and that's fine. If they don't want it, they don't have to approve it. But the fairness part comes in where there's some counties, especially rural counties, that desperately need this. They don't have rec leagues, they don't have travel leagues, and this is the one avenue where students can get athletic opportunities where they learn a lot of team building and other valuable life lessons. And for those counties that need it, we don't think the state should stand in the way. If one county has it that doesn't need it, they don't need to approve it. But they shouldn't stand in the way of those who do need the option. And I just want to point out a little history here. This body has supported such local options before. Most notably, I can think of a couple. Back in Governor Kane's term, he signed a bill that allowed local school districts to sign on with private schools for bus transportation. Strictly local option. No one has to do it, but if it's there, if they need it, as a very valuable tool. Most recently, there's 4 of you up here that were here in the Senate at the time, as recently as 2019, that voted to allow local option on whether to allow schools to open before Labor Day. So local option with school policy is a tradition in this body. I know you'll hear from opponents who will put a lot of horror stories out there. I just want to say one thing very emphatically. 35 states have this. 35 states have this. Not one has found the problems you'll hear the people mention coming after me. Not one state has repealed this law. If it's as bad as what we're going to hear, there's 35 misguided states out there. This has worked swimmingly in every state that's approved it. In Florida, the director of public instruction, or whatever his title was, the head guy there, told the New York Times exactly that. We heard horror story after horror story. We voted the law in. We have not had one complaint. So I would just like for you guys to think of this as a local option bill and let the localities have the option to do what's best for their local students. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I do.
Yes,
Madam Chair.
Senator.
So, Ms. Rossi, and looking at the bill, so it just says no public school shall become a member of an organization. You're talking about the Virginia High School League?
I think that's what the patron has in mind. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
And could the Virginia High School League change its policy without just do something by the governor? If you know.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the way I look at it, it looks like we're getting at the Virginia High School League, which prohibits homeschoolers from playing for school teams. Is that a fair? And it might be for the patron.
Yeah, I think that's a question for the patron. Or maybe the...
or someone behind me. Do we have somebody from Virginia High School League here? Yes. That'll be a question for the Virginia High School League. Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Ross.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Wait, let's just hear folks in support first.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Travis Strickman. I'm the governor's legislative liaison. We're here to support the bill and thank the patron for bringing it forward. Want to reaffirm that this has been, seen in many states, as was just stated, and want to, a lot of things have changed in this last year with COVID, and multiple individuals going and switching over to homeschooling, and would like this to be another option for them to participate in interscholastic activities as well. And so I know that sports played a large role in my life, and I think students should have the option, even though they're being homeschooled. Thank you all so much. Yes, ma'am.
Senator.
Did you say it should be the local school district's option to do this?
No, I said that they should have the option, as in the students
Who
should have the option. The students should have the option to be able to play sports if they're being homeschooled.
The student should have the option.
Yes, ma'am.
Through whom?
Yes, ma'am. So if they're being homeschooled, that's what the bill would basically allow for them to participate in school sports
With?
with public high schools.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Marcia Rose, and I am an assistant coach at Tallwood High School, but I am also 20 years of homeschooling my kids. So I have a unique perspective of this. I did call the delegate, Ms. Marsh. My daughter is now at LSU. My oldest son is now at Liberty, both of them products of homeschooling, and we have had the worst stories of not being able to compete in public school sports, but having to go around in different clubs. And my daughter was blessed, thank God, with a good coach, with my husband, who's the head coach of Tallwood girls track team in Virginia Beach. And she won nationals, regardless of the fact that she did not have the same competition. I come here also to let you know that a lot of the areas that was already discussed do not have coaching and facilities and access to public schools. I just talked to a football coach at Tallwood, and we are in agreement together. It is also the option of each school and school board and localities to decide if they want this. As a coach, he let me know, Mr. Joe Stranges is his name, that tryouts is not a given that a homeschool athlete or a student athlete will get in. It's not a given. But the coaches themselves will like the choice. I am an assistant coach at Tallwood, a public school, so I know we want the choice.
Okay.
And so I have the perspective of knowing both sides.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Okay. I see we have quite a few folks in opposition. If you will, again, be mindful of the folks behind you, and we'll do 5 minutes testimony on this side. Hello.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Mark Hubbard with McGuire Woods on behalf of the Virginia High School League. We are a member organization, which means we represent the schools, the public schools throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, and those hundreds of schools oppose this measure. It is a feeling of the schools that if you want to be part of the fabric of the educational community of the public schools, that brings along with it the privilege to also play in sports with those schools that you attend. One of our concerns is that there would be two separate sets of standards in terms of what each individual student has to meet, either as a public school student or as a homeschool student. And those two standards may not be equal, and so you could have students playing that aren't fulfilling the same standards. One example would be, and the schools use sports as a way to have discipline, and it's a very effective tool within the schools, but you could potentially have a student who would be expelled for disciplinary reasons from a public school, then be able to go home, become homeschooled, and come back and play on the football team at the school that he had just been expelled from. That is an extreme example, but it is an example. We oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Senator.
So let me follow up with a question. Thank you, Mark. Is there any other high school league that public schools belong to other than the Virginia High School
There's
League?
not.
Okay, that's right. So the bill says there is. So, all right. Then my question would be, who sets the policy that does not allow schools to allow homeschoolers to play on their local teams?
It is, the Virginia High School League policy says you have to be a public school student, or we do have one private school that is part of the Virginia High School
So,
League.
Madam Chair, is
Yes,
your
Senator.
policy dictated by code or by the Board of Education or by the members of the Virginia High School League? Who makes that policy that says we do not allow homeschoolers to play in our schools?
It is Virginia High School League policy, and this effort is to dictate to the high school league what to do.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Senator.
Just a follow-up question. Tell me what the high school leagues do in the 30 states that already have this. Do you know?
37.
They just manage it and administer it. The students
So they are able
participate.
to manage those
They
variables
are.
that are quite hypothetical, and kids can play and compete even if, and have more robust teams and access to facilities that they may not have in their community unless they are at the school. Okay, so it's not an insurmountable mass to fix it. Lift. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll start the clock again since we paused it for questions.
Madam Chair, Tom Smith with the Superintendent's Association. We've been long in opposition to this. One of the key things for us is when a homeschooler is out there, they're not enrolled in school. We have children that do virtual. They can do the Take 5 and Pass 5 through virtual. The key is to be enrolled so that they're going to be under the same rules and regulations that we do. This is not unlike, if you want to look at the logic, the NCAA. They require you to be enrolled in the school in which you play NCAA sports. They don't allow homeschoolers outside of enrollment to come play college sports.
Madam Chair, I will say, but they do allow their students to take classes at a different college. If you look back at Duke University for the past 25 years, the majority of their players took the majority of their classes at North Carolina Central, and nobody ever talks about that.
But they were
Excuse me,
enrolled
Madam Chair.
in a.
But they
were
enrolled at Duke, and they took their classes somewhere else.
But they were enrolled in
And
a
Coach
public
K is
university.
considered the greatest coach of all
If
time.
you will speak through the chair, that would.
Parents all got jobs in Durham. I don't know how.
Thank you, Senator Peake. If we will speak through the chair, then that would be helpful in the debate.
That's our key, Madam Chair, is you need to be enrolled, however you do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think he's talking to me, Madam Chair, and I hope.
I don't know who he's talking to at this point.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Bev Lammy, Henrico Schools, we needed a laugh this afternoon, so that was good. I just think I don't want to add too much to what has already been said. I think the testimony has been very, very clear. Henrico School Board, though, really does believe that they want their kids to play sports in their school system. I would just give you another example of why they really believe the parent has the right to choose how this plays out, whether it's in the classroom or if it's in sports. And we have kids going to specialty centers, and they want to play on the teams of the other school, and VHSL does not allow that. You have to play at the school where you attend. So thank you anyway. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Kathy Bircher representing Norfolk City Public Schools. I was going to let Senator Peake know that I'm a UNC basketball fan, so I have strong feelings about Coach K, but the Norfolk City Public School Board opposes this bill for the reasons mentioned.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Stacey Haney on behalf of the School Boards Association. Again, we have a longstanding position against this bill. I appreciate speakers in favor advocating for local control, but on this particular issue, this is not something that we want, and we have a strong position against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Vicki Kitts with the Virginia Education Association. I echo the sentiments of the previous speakers, and we oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this particular bill?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator.
I would like to point out that advocacy for local control only seems to apply to this particular piece of legislation.
Thank you, Senator. That is an interesting fact. Yes, thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Senator.
I'd have to counter that because 1303 last year returned the power to the school boards to make the decision about opening. So I believe in being consistent and that this could be made at the school boards.
I think we might be able to counter it with the bill that just passed this session, so we can go back and forth on that, it seems.
Which still empowers the school districts.
And no further comment. The next bill is Delegate Rome's HB 583 is, and this particular bill is giving every school, or it's requiring every school board to adopt policies that prohibit the school board or any school board employee from denying a student the opportunity to participate in any extracurricular school activity if the student cannot pay for a meal at the school or owes a school debt. And basically, if a student cannot pay for the meal, they can still participate in the extracurricular school activities, is what the bill is seeking to achieve. Is there anyone in support of the bill? Yes, please come forward.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Ethan Gardner. I'm a legislative aide for Delegate Rome, and I was here to see if I could just read a couple of several brief comments, public comments on this bill, since testimony won't be taken in full committee.
Please go ahead.
Amazing. First, the School Nutrition Association wasn't able to be here, but they reached out to say that they represent school nutrition professionals throughout the Commonwealth, and they support HB 583 as well as HB 587, which will be heard probably next, carried by Delegate Rome. They thank the delegate for her leadership in increasing access to school meals. Next, I wanted to read a brief story from a student that reached out to our office from Spotsylvania County named Madison Brown. She went to high school in Spotsylvania County, which historically had very high school lunch debt and uniquely strict policies regarding said debt. Her family endured a period of financial insecurity and could not pay for lunches despite technically falling above the income bracket for free lunch. She was a member of the school's cross-country team and simply refrained from eating most of the time for fear that incurring debt would prevent her attending meets, as was policy at her school. This was such a common issue on her team that the coaches spent much of their stipends on buying food for them. Some of them relied heavily on granola bars, bagels, and fruit they brought to practice. Occasionally, it would be the only meal for the day. But there was still a significant opportunity gap with the team. Those of us who were hungry simply were unable to run as far or as fast. They were quicker to fatigue. They were at greater risk than other teammates for certain kinds of injury, heat-related illness, and they couldn't build muscle mass as easily as their peers. This is why Madison supports HB 583. Next, Adam Russo. He is the director of food and nutrition at Prince William County Schools. He shared a brief statement in support of HB 583 that children don't accrue debt. To punish a child because of the financial constraints of their caregivers is not who we are as educators. Negative meal balances are the responsibility of adults and should be handled with dignity and respect with those adults and to never involve a child. And then last, Adele Settle, who's founder of Settle the Debt in Delegate Rome's district, which raises money and advocates for reducing school meal debt. She said that over the past 5 years, several parents have come to her for help when their child faced penalties like being forbidden to participate in field trips, prohibited from taking part in end-of-year celebrations, or not being able to walk at graduation for outstanding meal debts. These families simply couldn't afford to pay for their child's meal expenses. The parents felt shame and embarrassment their child was being excluded from important educational experiences because of their financial hardship. And often she was able to intervene to cover the child's meal debts and work with the school to improve their handling of this type of situation. Currently in Prince William County, these practices are no longer allowed, but in many other school districts, the practice of excluding students from opportunities or celebrations due to meal debt still occurs. She hopes that this body sees fit to end this practice so that all students can participate in extracurricular activities regardless of school meal debt status.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your bringing the information that Delegate Rome was going to share. Thank you.
Of course.
And we have one more.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'm Kenneth Gillian with New Virginia Majority. I would like to align my comments and sentiments with those of the previous speaker, and so we also support the bill. Thank you all for your time.
Excellent, thank you. And is anyone here to speak in opposition? Were there any questions from committee members? Okay, thank you. And you will probably provide similar information, is that correct, for the next bill? It's HB 587, again, patroned by Delegate Rome. And this is the school breakfast program, and it requires each public elementary or secondary school to process each web-based or paper-based application for participation in the school breakfast program or the National School Lunch Program that's administered by the USDA within 6 working days. I've talked to the delegate about this, and apparently there is a considerable lag in the processing, which then affects a child's ability to receive their meals. And so if you want to testify to that, please go ahead.
Yes, I'd be happy to. First, I want to reemphasize that our office worked with the School Nutrition Association, who supports the bill, as was stated in the previous statement. Next, I'll read a brief comment from Adam Russo, who again is the Director of Food and Nutrition at Prince William County Public Schools. He says, as an operator of the National School Lunch Program for 8 years, I can share how imperative the turnaround time is on free and reduced lunch applications from both a business standpoint and as a benefit for those we serve. From a business lens, processing applications ensures a captive audience and federal reimbursement for meals served. This brings in federal dollars to the Commonwealth to pay local employees, local purveyors, and support education. And from the human lens, what is more more fulfilling than helping our neighbors most in need. By processing applications as quick as possible, we can ensure families do not accrue a negative meal balance, or worse yet, choose to go hungry. We can prepare our scholars for success both academically and socially with nourishing meals. Participation in our programs has been documented to reduce absenteeism, behavioral problems, and increase test scores. Additionally, free and reduced meal benefits carry additional categorical eligibility for other programs that can benefit the whole child and family to ensure maximum growth potential.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. And then lastly, again from Adele Settle, who's the founder of Settle the Debt in Delegate Rome's district. She wrote that over the years, many parents have come to her needing help with their child's meal accounts. They had accrued negative balances and couldn't afford to pay it off. Sometimes parents would tell me they had applied for free and reduced meals, but while they waited for the district to process their applications and change their child's eligibility status, debts continued to accrue. Parents often didn't realize this was happening, and since free and reduced meal eligibility isn't retroactive, they still owe money despite being qualified for free and reduced meals going forward. She's proud of her home county of Prince William. Prince William processes applications within 24 hours typically, but other neighboring jurisdictions have not acted as quickly. All families deserve prompt action, and school districts will benefit from receiving the higher free and reduced meal reimbursement rate if the applications are handled quickly. This is a common sense solution. Will help both families and schools avoid accumulating meal debts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Again, my name is Kenneth Gilliam. I'm with New Virginia Majority, and we support the bill. I would like to align my comments, our sentiments with those have already been stated. The only thing I would add is that if you all remember, during the pandemic, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Food Services, they extended a waiver that will allow most of our children to get free reduced lunch in our public schools to address food insecurity. The extension of that waiver ends this year. So this bill provides another step that will lessen the lag time to make sure that our students, as our schools, parents, and students are preparing for the next academic year, we're lessening the lag time that families are hearing back about their status or applications. So I hope that you all support the bill.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, thank you very much. Were there any questions from committee members? Okay. The next bill is HB 787, and this declares it an unlawful and discriminatory practice for any school, local school board, or employee or contractor to train or instruct any individual on any divisive concept as it is defined in the bill for the purpose of promoting and encouraging such individual to adopt or believe such a concept. This bill requires the DOE to establish model policies for the prevention of such unlawful or discriminatory practices, and each local school board to adopt policies that are consistent with, but that may be more comprehensive than the model policies that are established by the DOE. Is there anyone to speak in support of this legislation? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Okay, and we will limit it to 5 minutes on this side. So.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. J.T. Kessler on behalf of the Virginia School Boards Association. We oppose this bill. I think there's a lot of reasons for opposing it, but what is decisive to me may not be decisive to or divisive to you. And I don't, as a former teacher, I think this would put our teachers in a very uncomfortable position. I'm thinking of today's news within Ukraine as I was a high school government and history teacher. This could be divisive. We see misinformation being spread about this in the media, and it could become very divisive. I think this would lead to more teachers leaving the profession, and we would hope that the committee would not support this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Committee, Vicki Kitts with the Virginia Education Association. I echo the sentiments of the previous speaker. It really puts our teachers in a really predicament, as we do not know what truly is the definition of divisive. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, Senator.
Bill 787 is the version that's on where there's just some stricken language on line 25.
I am reading the summary.
Yeah, I mean, I read the summary too, but when I looked at the bill, I don't know how they match up to what I'm looking at as the bill unless I have the wrong, is this the whole bill? It's just stricken language online. That's all I have on LIS.
Can our staff?
It's the whole thing.
787, right?
787 is moral and character education, certain teaching declared unlawful and
So
discriminatory.
is it not the 21422 PDF as engrossed?
Staff,
See, this is
I'm
all
not
that's
sure.
there.
Yeah, it only has 2 paragraphs,
That's all
A
it's-
and B. That's it.
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't, is it something wrong? This is what I came up with from 214. Yeah.
That's the bill.
That's correct. It has new language, right? But it's all
There's
new
no,
language.
oh, it's all, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So the strike,
It's
the
all-
strike is that, okay.
It's an amendment from the House, that's the strike, but it's all new language.
Yeah, only the last 2 lines are stricken. Please go ahead.
Madam Chair, Tom Smith, Superintendent's Association. We're opposed for the reasons stated.
Okay, thank you. And were there any other comments? Okay. So the next bill is 789, also from Delegate LaRocque, and this particular proposed legislation would prohibit any public elementary or secondary school student from participating in any family life education program without the prior written consent of his or his parent. The bill requires a summary that is required to be posted and distributed to parents for each such program to include contact information for the individual or the office that's responsible for maintaining printed and audio-visual program materials. Is there anyone to speak in support? Is there anyone to speak in opposition?
Tired of hearing from me.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Bev Lammy, Henrico Schools. Ladies and gentlemen, we really would invite you to kind of think about how this plays out at school. At the beginning of the year, the curriculum for the family life education content is sent to parents with links directly to all of it that is posted online. We ask them to look at it, review it, and if they're uncomfortable with their child participating, they write a permission slip, or I should say, a slip that says, we do not want our child to participate. If you were to flip that, because we have very few parents that really take this opportunity to choose not to have the family life ed, if you were to flip it, we would have to be having paperwork extraordinarily, just, so many students. And then, if you all know how hard it is to get report cards signed, acknowledged, this would be the same issue, and we would not know whether we're supposed to teach this child or not to teach the child. So, appreciate your understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just clarify, currently in the procedure we have in place is that parents can opt out, and this is requiring that every parent would opt in. Okay. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I think you said it best, but J.T. Kessler on behalf of Virginia School Boards Association, we oppose the bill. Parents already have they can review and opt out of this, and this would just cause a paperwork burden on our schools.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Tom Smith, Superintendent's Association. We're also opposed for the reasons stated. We know that the value that the General Assembly has placed on family life, we've seen that year and year, and so we're concerned about its impact on this, and we're opposed.
Okay, thank you. Any other additional comments, questions from committee? Okay, we are moving right along. So, HB 873, patroned by Delegate Greenhall, This particular bill requires each school board to enter into a collaborative agreement with a local law enforcement agency to employ at least one SRO or to employ at least one school security officer in each public, elementary, and secondary school in the local school division. The bill prohibits the Board of Education from granting any school board a waiver from such a requirement, but permits the Board of Education to grant a partial waiver to allow the sharing of a single SRO or a school security officer by two different public schools that are adjoining or within close proximity and that share facilities such as parking. I believe, isn't there an amendment also that the schools would lose money or lose their funding, state funding, if they did not agree to that? Just want to double check. Is that correct? It's not in there anymore. It was in the original bill. Has that been stricken? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone to speak in support of the bill? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Rickman from the Office of the Governor. We are here to speak in support of the bill and thank the patron for bringing it forward. The substitute of the bill does a lot of big changes. It actually will make it to where it has SROs in each school still, but also allow SROs to be shared in a certain division by the board. And so takes away all the financial burdens and only really apply to about 15 school divisions that do not have any SROs currently. And so it makes a lot more sense and takes away a lot of the financial concerns that we were talked to about.
Are there any questions?
Yes. Those that don't have school resource officers, it's their local choice not to. Isn't that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So you would take away the local choice in education?
We believe that, we believe that in the sense that schools should always be looking out for the safety and security of all students in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and believe that SROs play a very large part in that effect in, having threats and being deterrents of threats to schools. Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen some of the films of what some of the actions of school resource officers have been in different states?
Yes, ma'am, but if there was no one there, if there's absolutely no one there, does it really give a fighting chance in that same sense?
Well, I mean, some of them have been pretty brutal to the students.
Sorry, the SROs have been brutal to the students. I am not
Yes.
aware of that. No, ma'am.
Well, go online.
Any other questions? If you could clarify for me, in Section C, it says, if the school board of any local school division refuses or fails to comply with the requirements set forth in subsection A, such school divisions shall not be eligible for any grants from the Commonwealth, from the Board of Education, or the Department of Education during such a period of noncompliance. Can you clarify that language?
I'm so sorry. So I was under the assumption that you had seen the substitute language that Delegate Greenhall was bringing forward today.
Is there a substitute?
I believe we had worked with Ryan Brimmer.
Yeah, he intends to offer a substitute.
You can't release the substitute.
So sorry.
So,
but
okay. Okay, we will address that in full committee then.
You can have the full. Sorry. So,
Since it's not supposed to be released, we'll hear it in full committee then. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And do we have anyone to speak in opposition then? Again, we will limit it to 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, committee members, Amy Woolard with Legal Aid Justice Center. I'm also here in opposition for the Virginia Student Power Network, a statewide org that represents hundreds of college-age young people throughout Virginia. We remain opposed to this. You all heard a similar version in the Senate some weeks ago. Again, our position is there are conversations around whether and if to use SROs happening in many localities. Charlottesville and Albemarle have already ended their agreements, and they should be allowed to continue to do so. If we're going to talk about mandated positions within our school buildings and what our schools need, we need to be focused on mental health counselors, on nurses, on all of the positions listed in our standards of quality. That is what creates a safe school environment. Those, along with activities, green space, buildings that have roofs that don't leak, all of the things that you all are talking about in the money committees to make sure we have a strong public K-12 system, not law enforcement officers or security officers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, John Smith with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. I'd align myself with the comments of the previous commenter and just add that students with disabilities are disproportionately affected by the over-criminalization of student behaviors, and we're in need of a lot of things in our schools, and where the discussions about how to invest money in order to ensure that students are receiving what they need when they have issues in school really ought to happen at a lower level. And those debates are ongoing and should continue. We shouldn't be directing schools as to how to spend their funds in this way.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Madam Chair, members of the committee, J.T. Kessler, on behalf of the Virginia School Boards Association, we oppose this bill. Don't want to say the same things that have come before, but echo that. But just want to point out that we believe these decisions are best made by local school board members who decide what is best for their schools. If they feel a need for SROs, they can do that. If they want to look in other places, they can do that as well.
Madam Chair, question.
Yes, Senator, go ahead.
Is the school board's position that local jurisdictions and school boards should be able to make decisions as to whether or not teachers could be armed?
We have no position on that.
No position. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Bennett, representing the Association of Counties. We're not opposed to the policy intent of this legislation. We do have concerns over the potential fiscal impact. The Senate companion was mentioned, and there was a fiscal impact statement from the Commission on Local Government. The estimated costs to localities range from $0 to $19 million. $19 million for Fairfax County, $1.5 million for City of Norfolk, just as examples. I know that the SR grant program does provide state funds that localities can apply for. That does still require them to provide a local match through the LCI. So we do have concerns over the fiscal impact, as well as the shortage of sheriff's deputies and law enforcement officers across the Commonwealth. So those are our concerns on the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Kenneth Gilliam with New Virginia Majority, and we also strongly oppose this bill. Also align our comments with the sentiments of the Legal Aid Justice Center, the Virginia Student Power Network, and Tenants and Workers United. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Vicki Kitts with the Virginia Education Association. We echo the sentiments of the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from committee? Okay, the next bill is HB 879 with the patron Delegate Rasool. This bill requires the 9-member Board of Education, all of whom are appointed by the governor, to include at least one member with experience or expertise in local government leadership or policy making, at least one member with experience or expertise in CTE, and at least one member with experience or expertise in early childhood education. Is there anyone who wanted to speak in support of this legislation? Oh, he is.
Oh,
okay.
Wrapping up?
Okay. We will let him, well, why don't you go ahead and we will hear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to be in Commerce and Energy after this, so this frees it up. But Jeremy Bennett, again, with the Association of Counties. As you know, large funding partners of K-12 education in the Commonwealth, providing more than $4 billion beyond the required local effort. We feel that local governments should have a seat at the table of this policymaking body. Appreciate the delegate bringing forth the bill, and certainly appreciate the efforts of both bodies this session to provide additional funding for established practices already. So thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And was there anyone going to speak in opposition? No? All right. Okay, we will wait for the delegate to get here. Is it, are all the folks coming then, or, okay.
The House just adjourned, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Shall we just keep moving right along? There he is, yay. Speak of the Rasool. Thank you, Delegate.
Yes, thank you all for
Patience.
We already PBI'd 2 of your bills.
All right. Made it easy.
So we had just come to your HB 879.
Yes.
And we've heard Association of Counties in support of it. So if you want to briefly speak to the bill?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. 879 is really the basis of a JLARC study that said, as we were analyzing the board, that it would really help the board to have some additional expertise. One, of the 9 members, we would want 1 member from local government or with local government policy-making expertise, 1 from CTE, and 1 with early childhood background, especially since we've shifted some responsibilities from DSS to the Department of Education. So that was what the report concluded. I'm happy to answer any questions. It'll be a pleasure to look favorably on 879.
Are there any questions for the patron? Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to recommend reporting.
It's been moved to recommend reporting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will recommend your bill be reported in the full committee next Thursday. Your next bill is on the back of our pages here, on the very back. And please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 1108 is before us. House Bill 1108 is rather straightforward in saying that as we are teaching of some of the dangers of addiction already in school, that we talk about the dangers of the addiction to gambling. We've heard from many stakeholders, including many families who have been ripped apart. I know personally it's hard for me to open social media, drive anywhere, go anywhere without being inundated now in the state as we've kind of opened things up. And what we're seeing is that the fastest growing group of gamblers today are youngsters. And what happens these days is it actually begins with certain apps that allow you to, for example, build fantasy teams, and then those apps can transition right into a gambling app. And so what we just want to do is make sure that people, our youngest, realize that this is an issue that they need to have a red flag on, and that it can be an addiction for sure. I'm not sure. I think some of the testimony that we were going to have was probably going to come in by Zoom. I did have some testimony that was emailed to us just in case we weren't able to have them come here, but I'm happy to share that as well, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Delegate. We are not able to Zoom any individuals in this particular subcommittee room. So if you would like to summarize the folks who have provided testimony to you.
Go ahead.
Steve Rossi, Family Foundation. We support and we've worked, had conversations and support with the bill, and thank you for bringing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. How are we doing that?
Yeah,
Please sit down.
I can sit over here. Madam Chair, I'm John Suswick with Virginia Professional Educators. We support this bill. There's been a proliferation of legalized gambling in Virginia over the past few years. Right now, we're building casinos in all the major cities. There's been a proliferation of sports books, so-called sports books, online gambling, and these operations target the poor and the vulnerable, in addition to our students, in addition to young people. And if you look at the advertisements for these operations, they tend to promise unlimited wealth to those who participate. And we know that in many cases, that's not the outcome. So we commend Delegate Rasool for offering this bill, and we urge you to approve it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Committee, Vicki Kitts with the Virginia Education Association. We do support this bill because we want our students to be educated on the various things that affect their lives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And did you have any other additional comments you wanted to share, Delegate?
Anyone against?
We will get to against. He was just going to share some of the other folks who support it.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a heartbreaking story about, sadly, an individual who was named Nick. His family wanted me to share a little bit of his story. Was a top student athlete, was doing very well in school. Unfortunately, started with internet gambling, and that led him to spiral to a life that sadly has led him to be currently in a vegetative state. What they just want to do, Madam Chair, is just to make sure that we are just raising the red flag, because right now our youth that segment is growing twice as fast as far as those who have an addiction to gambling problem, as many folks that are running the National Problem Gambling Awareness Week have outlined. So I hope it'd be the pleasure of the subcommittee to recommend reporting.
And is there anyone here who wanted to speak in opposition to this? Okay. Any questions by committee?
Madam Chair, yeah.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only question, I'd spoken to the delegate. I just wanted to see if anybody was against. My only concern is we always keep adding things for teachers to go over, and he assured me that it would not create any unfunded mandate for schools. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Senator Peak, that is correct. So what will happen now is the board, as they promulgate addiction guidelines, they will be promulgating addiction guidelines around gambling. And so whether it be what we hear is many times, for example, in health class where you might be learning about addiction, they'll integrate this into some of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Then one further comment, I'll just have to correct the prior speaker who said we have casinos in all the major cities. I want to point out that Lynchburg, obviously a major city, does not have a casino. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The Hill City.
That's what I said. Major cities.
The Hill City, that's for sure.
Or the Star City.
And Star City.
Point
Move to report.
well taken.
Move to recommend reporting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend reporting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will be recommending reporting next Thursday.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for
And does he need to come to full committee?
He needs to run as fast as he can out of this committee.
I know. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't believe you need to come next week.
Thank you so much. Thanks for indulging the delegates on this long day.
Thank you, Delegate. Okay, have we received any word from anybody else, any other patrons?
Delegate Guzman is on her way over.
Thank you. Thank you.
He was fast.
He is fast. Seen him on the court.
Were y'all texting them or calling them? Baton, we've got Baton, Little Rock.
We almost made it. And Delegate Guzman is presenting HB 1026.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I have a couple of technical amendments.
Is there a motion to accept the amendments? All in favor? The amendments are in front of us. Please go ahead.
Yes, and I believe Ryan can explain what the technical amendments are. You've read? Okay, thank you. All right. So this is House Bill 1026. It's a bill that will codify the Digital Citizenship, Internet Safety, and Media Literacy Council. This bill does not have any physical impact right now. Through the pandemic, students have been relying more on internet. So we need to take our children's digital safety education seriously and make sure that we are giving our children the necessary tools to be successful with technology. As I mentioned earlier, this bill is going to codify this council. Actually was established during the former administration and worked before the pandemic during the summer of 2019 to continue receiving advisory recommendations for the safety of our K-12 students. This council will include I believe that this will support children with regard to internet safety, digital citizenship, and media literacy, and it will provide additional resources, administrators, and teachers to better bridge the gap between technology and people while educating about safe practices and successful technology use. There's a pilot program currently happening in my district in Prince William County where we have the way that we are using it is that things that are addressed to this council could be internet safety and communication and social networking, how children could use it respectfully. They could also be addressed issues as copyright, intellectual reports, cyberbullying, that it's so important. So I hope that you could support this, and I'm here to ask any questions, to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions for the patron?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead, Senator.
All right. I'm reading it says, requires each school board to enter into a collaborative agreement with the local law enforcement agency to employ at least one school resource officer or employ at least one.
That's my bill.
That's the.
I'm sorry.
That's
Which
the
one?
previous bill.
Senator Peake.
I'm sorry. Gotcha. I was confused. All right. Sorry. Good.
Madam Chairman, I have a question.
Please go ahead, Senator.
Madam Chairman, I have what I hope may be a friendly amendment from my district, who's had computers for a long time. They've suggested that you might want to include at least one or more high school students who've shown significant aptitude in this area to serve on the council. They're extremely knowledgeable about the use of the internet, social media, and I that makes sense to me too. So if you're amenable, maybe council can add that between here and the big committee.
Madam Chair, I tell the senator that is perfectly okay. Actually, I have one of my constituents' children right now serving as a page, and she was sharing with me how these advisory councils are formed in a school currently, but they actually don't have a voice during the decision-making process. So I think this is the perfect opportunity. That's fine.
So that's a good. Second. All in favor? Aye. So we will introduce that amendment in the full committee. Okay. Are there any other questions for the patron? And do we have anyone to speak briefly in support? Do we have anyone in opposition?
Move to recommend reporting.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend reporting. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will recommend reporting next week on Thursday. And you may just want to come in case there's any questions, but I don't think it'll be absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you, Delegate.
When I get called down to committee, I'll have to run down.
Delegate, please come ahead. Delegate. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Delegate LaRock.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, Delegate, while you folks were busy, we went ahead and heard some public testimony because we had people waiting for many hours here. So we have heard public testimony already on HB 787. But if you would like to go ahead and present your bill, we can take a motion on that.
Yes, well, I would say just in the way of a general comment that I trust we all agree that we are against discrimination against minorities and women. This bill would make it unlawful to promote racist, sexist comments in the classroom, concepts, excuse me. But it would, in no way would it inhibit accurately teaching history, which depicts examples of racism and sexism. An example of why it's necessary, and I'll go to a very fundamental document in our from our nation's history, which is the Declaration of Independence, which says all men are created equal. And believe it or not, this is explicitly rejected by the teachers of critical race theory. So we have outlined in the bill, as I'm sure you're familiar, 5 specific prohibitions. First one being that, prohibiting teaching that one race or sex is inherently superior to one or another, to another race or sex. Prohibits an individual by virtue of the individual's race or sex, teaching that it is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. It would prohibit teaching that an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of the individual's race or sex. And it would prohibit that an individual's moral character is necessarily determined by the individual's race or sex. And the last is that it would prohibit teaching that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members. So while I certainly expect this is not being taught in schools around the Commonwealth, I know from seeing information that was brought forward by FOIA exams that Loudoun County, for example, has spent quite a bit of money bringing these concepts into teacher training and into the classroom. I've talked to teachers who have been spent quite a bit of time in training that advances the teaching of these issues. And so I hope it's the will of the committee to come to an agreement that when children are taught to accept these concepts as right, that we're not doing them any favors. We want to unify people around the ideas that we are all created equal. And so I think that would adequately communicate what the intent of the bill is and what I hope you'd agree would accomplish.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator, please go ahead.
I find the comment that all men are created equal being a example of what we should move toward, sort of somewhat offensive. The person who wrote that owned slaves. We didn't allow women to vote until 100 years ago. How can you use that as an example of what we should be doing?
Madam Chair, in
Delegate.
response to that, I think that it brings to mind the difference between being an originalist and a textualist. I have always accepted the Declaration of Independence and other examples where the word men or man are used to be a reference to men or mankind actually as a collective. But if that's not the best example, I hope that using
Well, at
that,
the time, they didn't think of it the way you do.
and I'm really don't think it's productive, at least for me, to enter into a debate on that. And perhaps that wasn't the best example to bring forward, but hopefully we can agree on the concepts that this bill seeks to discourage in the classroom.
Thank you, Delegate. Other questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator.
Delegate, can you give me an example of an inherently divisive concept?
Well, I would say to the senator that my original bill used that, and as I paid attention to the discussion of similar bills in this, particularly Senator Kiggins, I realized that that is open to interpretation. And so I'm glad that the folks that helped me shape this bill and to what it is found that the bill would be better without that phrase. And so I would say it's too general for me to put forward a definition that would really be meaningful. We might all have differing opinions of what it means, and that's why we've left it out of this bill.
Madam
Senator?
Chair,
Yes, Senator.
I still see. Am I on the right bill?
No, this is the one that confused me
It can
before.
be hard to find the newest one.
787, right.
Substitutes on these things.
Okay.
I couldn't find it in there earlier. That was my question. That's why I was confused.
Okay,
It's
then
out.
let me ask you this. Can you give me an example of where critical race theory is taught in any public school in the Commonwealth?
Well, I would say to the senator that while I'm no expert on critical race theory, similar to my answer on divisive concepts, I'm not trying to elude the question, but I think critical race theory can mean different things to different people, and that's why I tried to distill this down to actually address things that I would hope we would agree on are perhaps would be included in the concept of critical race theory, but rather than use a term, whether it's divisive concepts or critical race theory, which is kind of open to interpretation, I just thought it would be better to identify these five concepts that, again, hopefully we would all agree are not unifying.
Just, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator.
Just so that I can be clear, can you give me those five again?
So they are, as I read, I put it in bolder, larger type for myself here. And I'll just quote the bill. It shall be unlawful and a discriminatory practice for any local school board or employee or contractor thereof to teach any public elementary or secondary school student to believe or promote to any such student as valid belief that, and so I'll start into the list. So they shouldn't teach them that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. The second was, and I'm just going to preface it by saying they should not teach that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, is inherently racist or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. And the next one is that they shouldn't teach, and again, that's my paraphrase, preface, they shouldn't teach that any individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of the individual's race or sex. And the next one is, should not teach an individual's moral character is necessarily determined by the individual's race or sex. And the last one, they should not teach that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex.
Okay, so, Madam Chair.
Senator.
So if I'm teaching African American history, which I did teach, and there was a former governor of South Carolina who said that slaves suffered from drapetomania, which was a disease that was caused them to run away, and that was why they ran away. It wasn't because they were unhappy on the plantation. It was because they had that disease. Would that be considered a divisive concept? Or am I teaching accurate history? He said it.
Madam Chair, I would,
Yes,
I would
Delegate.
answer the senator, thank you, by saying that any accurate teaching of history, such as the example that you use, when brought forward in an objective and fair and balanced way of teaching, would be completely appropriate, and I don't believe that this bill is intended or would have the effect of limiting that sort of teaching at all. So I would hope that kind of teaching continues, and I see it as very necessary, as I suspect that you would as well. And again, if you see part of this bill that you think would inhibit teaching of any of these aspects of history that we all would, I think, agree help bring people to a better understanding of even some of the darker sides of our country's history and the treatment of other human beings, I'm completely with you in favor of doing that. But stopping short of presenting these ideas as being truthful that or characteristic of people who were not part of those crimes or that mistreatment that took place in the past.
Madam Chair, I have some.
Yes, Senator.
I don't have any more questions. I do have a comment that I'll do later.
Okay, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Senator. Any other questions or comments for the delegate? I just have one question, Delegate, and as I read it, it says that no one shall be teaching as valid belief that one race is inherently superior to another race. I would agree that that should not be taught. I don't believe that any teacher that I've ever encountered or in any school system that is being taught. But one group of people who do promote that idea are white supremacists, and we've seen that as part of the publicity, the information that they share, and that's certainly one of their critical pillars, the superiority of the white race over others. And I think we should do everything in our power to address the issues of white supremacy as a destructive element, not just in the Commonwealth, but throughout the country, and the kind of actions that such groups take are particularly destructive. But I don't think that this is an issue that's coming from our teachers. I don't think our schools are teaching divisive concepts. I don't see it in any of our curricula. And people often talk about critical race theory, but I haven't met anyone who can define it for me. I know what critical race theory is, like Senator Locke. We teach in higher education, and we've used it often as a lens to talk about our different disciplines. But I've certainly never met a teacher in our public school systems who's using it. I've never met a parent who can actually define it for me. So I'm just wondering what definition one would use to build this proposed legislation.
Well, I would say to the Senator, I have read a fair amount on critical race theory. I mean, not to presume I'm a scholarly level of understanding, but just from some credible sources. And again, it brought me to the point where I see that it is harmful to teach, so I'm going to use the phrase, divisive concepts, but I don't want to define what they are, because that is a rather subjective term and could be just characterized very differently. What I would say is that perhaps this bill is too late in coming or ahead of its time, because the example you use, white supremacist, I would say this bill would prevent someone from saying that their white supremacy should be accepted. Now, that seems kind of far-fetched, but I think this is just as much a protection against teaching that white supremacy is right as it is teaching that certain ethnicities are inferior to white people. That is what this hopes to prevent, and I think would prevent. It is not targeted at preventing any teaching except that which it spells out exactly here. And so with that said, I again, perhaps this isn't the time. There's a lot of controversy. I don't need to tell this committee around certain concepts, but if we could agree on the most fundamental, have the most fundamental agreement on what is wrong, what would be beneficial to all people of all ethnicities and people of male and female, that we'd be in a better place. But obviously, that's up to the committee to.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Senator.
I'd like to speak to the bill because I have to say, I've read every word of this bill several times now, and there's nothing in there I can disagree with. I don't, and I'm going to give you an example because we're talking about the wrong things. Nothing in this bill says divisive, divisive concept? Nothing in this bill. This is a level playing field for anybody that would seek to demean another person based on supremacy of their race or for any other reason. And I think it articulates the values I believe in as an American and as a Virginian. And I will tell you, I had many mothers come into my office this year after the school year last year and tell me they didn't know what to do for their little boys. And this is in private and public. And this bill is about preventing shame. That's what we're really talking about here. There's nothing about divisive content or anything else, or even critical race theory. This is not making somebody feel bad about themselves based on any variable. And I can tell you, I had many mothers distraught, switching schools, there's boys would come home crying because they were told they were bad. And I think I think we're all charged up. We've, just had an election, a lot of political words and phrases going around, but this is actually honest. I move we report the bill.
Before we take a motion, Senator Locke had a final comment she wanted to make.
Yes, I do. And it's quite easy to speak from one's white privilege about this particular piece of legislation and what's wrong with it. Well, I'm glad that it does. Because someone like me who has had to deal with being told one's entire life that I was inherently inferior because of my race, because of my gender, because of the way I looked, and now all of a sudden we care about those things, and we don't want to talk about it anymore. Just because you go around and change the words around and take out inherently divisive concepts and you mean the exact same thing with this piece of legislation, now all of a sudden it matters. The legislation means the exact same thing. Just because you don't put the words in there doesn't mean that you don't mean the exact same thing. This is the same piece of legislation. It's not different. It's not different. Children in my community have had to deal with these issues all their lives, and they continue to have to deal with it. This is no different. They're still being shamed because of race and gender and all matter of issues because of this. So don't tell me this doesn't say anything. That's not different.
Yes, Delegate.
No, Madam Chairman, I will have to respond.
I will let you respond. The delegate wanted to respond.
Senator Locke, you're right. I will never fully understand what I've never experienced. But I can say from the bottom of my heart, I want other people to understand it as best they can. And I want to unify people. And so please believe me when I say in all sincerity that the purpose of this is not to rob anybody of an understanding of what will help them better comprehend what you're describing. I see you as a human being equal to me, and I'm so glad that our world is moving much closer to the point where everybody does. But I understand we're not there entirely yet. If you see this as actually undermining what you described needs to happen, then then you have no choice but to vote against it. But I can tell you, in my heart, that's not the intention, and I hope it wouldn't be the effect if you were to allow this to go forward. Thank you.
Senator Donovan, you wanted to respond.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Madam Chairman, and my friend and the gentle lady, Senator, that what happened is egregious, and we should do everything we can to make sure we fix it. I have heard from you, that's why you came here. Trying to fix what's been wrong is part of the reason I've been here. I'm just saying the words here say what we both believe. And, that I don't think I deserve to be labeled either, because I'm here earnestly trying to work and participate. And so I think we all, this is a good way to approach it, because the other language and the conversations that we have that end up making each other feel badly are not where we want to go. That's all I'll say.
Madam Chair. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Senator Howell has her hand.
I think it's pretty obvious, just from the discussion here, that this bill is premature for where we are in our society right now. It's hurtful. It's hurtful to some people, obviously. And I think the best thing we could do is either have you strike the bill or that we pass it by indefinitely.
Senator Peake, you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I did this when we had the Secretary of Education and the full committee, and we have the comments that there's no such thing as critical race theory in Virginia schools, and I just refer anyone back to my comments on that day. But in 2015, under Governor Terry McAuliffe on the Department of Education, it's still on there, screenshots of talking about teaching critical race theory. And then under Governor Northam, his superintendent of schools, James Lane, sent out a memo to all the schools talking about embracing the tenets of critical race theory. So it does.
That's not in this bill.
It was commented on that it doesn't exist in Virginia. That's my response to that. And I think that phrases like white privilege or privilege and things, we had privilege bingo that were being taught in a city high school. I think those are divisive concepts.
The last word, perhaps?
Please summarize, and then we will move on.
Thank you for being generous with your time. I would lose a debate if I entered it with you, but my understanding of history is that we are where we are as a nation. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, perhaps one could even say the Civil War was fought because many people wanted to move us to a better place, a place where we would all prohibit this, what is written in this bill, and we would favor unifying people around what is actually the opposite of this, the idea that we are all human beings and that we should not be treating each other in a way that this would prohibit. So with that said, I thank you for giving me the last word.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to PBI.
Second.
It's been moved that we recommend PBIing the bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Its recommendation is on a vote of 3-2 that it be passed by indefinitely, and that will be shared with the full committee next week. Delegate, you have 789. We've already heard testimony, public testimony on this as well, but if you can summarize and present your legislation.
Thank you. The simple premise of this is actually has a lot in common with the other bill that I have, which is a equal opportunity savings account. I don't need to explain to the committee what family life education is, but it is sensitive material. Parents know their children best. All children are at different stages developmentally, and so we seek to empower the parents to make the final decision, to actually be informed and to decide whether or not family life education, as it's being taught at a specific grade level, is best for their children. In presenting this in prior years, I did discover what I think is probably the strongest evidence in favor of it, and that was that a series of studies that PTAs post making the point that parental involvement greatly enhances outcomes. And so by informing parents better, asking them to make a conscious decision, involving them in the presentation of explicit sometimes, but sensitive material, I think would improve the overall outcome. So not a perfect bill, but I think perhaps offers the potential of having kids be taught in a more age-appropriate fashion as decided by parents, and adapting to what the material that they are presented with in a way that benefits them. And that's the concept.
Thank you, Delegate. And we did hear public testimony in opposition, and I'll try to summarize as best as I can, but I'll also speak as a parent of two daughters who went through Chesterfield County schools, and I remember, I think starting in third grade, maybe fourth grade, every year I would receive a notification that family life section is going to be taught. Here are the materials that are going to be covered, the topics that are going to be addressed, and if I desired, I could opt out my child. I had a form that I could fill out. So that was always available to me as a parent, and I think it's pretty consistent across the Commonwealth that school divisions work in this way. What your bill is recommending then is not the opt-out feature, but the opt-in feature, and so that every parent, every family would have the requirement that they are opting their child in. Otherwise, their child would not receive the family life education. Is that correct?
That's correct.
From the school divisions, we've heard that this would require an extraordinary amount of paperwork. If you can think about the large school systems that we have throughout the Commonwealth, trying to track every parent, whether they've received the information and whether they're opting in, that would be quite a bit of effort. Why are we trying to flip the situation when every family already has the option of engaging or not engaging with the family life curriculum, and it's simply an option to pull their child out during that section when it's being taught. Otherwise, the children would be receiving that education. That is the primary opposition that we heard, and I hope I summarized the folks that we spoke to earlier. So I will leave it at that. Is there any other? Are there any other comments from committee members?
I move to PBI, Madam Chairman. I think opt-out's the right policy.
There is a motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second that this bill be recommended as passed by indefinitely next week. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition?
No.
It is 4-1 with that recommendation.
Thank you.
And is that your last bill, Delegate, or you have one more?
I do have a substitute for House Bill 1024.
1024, yes. If you can summarize that. Oh,
Yes.
let's move the substitute first.
Yes. So I'll just do the high-level concept and
Let's
not
move
take
the
up.
substitute.
Oh,
It's been moved and seconded that the substitute be agreed to. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The substitute is now in front of us. Thank you. If you can summarize.
Yeah, thank you. The idea of a savings account, equal opportunity savings account, the name comes from the eligibility group, but before I go into the eligibility groups and just a light summary of the mechanics, it basically proposes that 95% of the SOQ funding from the state would go into a managed account, managed by a parent, to be used for the education of a student. So again, promoting parental involvement, I think there's a significant potential savings to the Commonwealth and even to school districts when a parent takes a primary role in planning and actually teaching a student. The eligibility groups are parents whose children have been have attended school in a public school for the last 2 years, and a parent choose to withdraw the student. Beyond that, it would be the students would qualify if their family income is less than 300% of the federal poverty guideline. A parent who is an active duty member of the armed forces, and the reason for that is that military families move a lot, and perhaps a education that took that into consideration would be beneficial to them. A student with an IEP, and again, thinking that parents know their children best, it can be very difficult to for schools to customize, try as they may, and very expensive as well. And then also the fourth criteria is that students who have been a victim of harassment, hazing, bullying, other mistreatment in a school, I've abbreviated the list there, but ones that do not feel comfortable continuing in a school, this would give them the mobility to take a different approach to educating that would involve the parents. So many benefits to it. I've got pages and volumes that I'm sure you'll ask me. I'll bring up if there's questions. But again, out of respect for the committee's time, that is the concept. And I think that, again, glad to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions from the committee? So perhaps while we're waiting for questions, I know this is a bill on which we did not have time to hear public testimony, so let's go ahead and, again, limit it to 5 minutes on each side. Is there anybody here to speak in support of HB 1024? Is there any who would like to speak in opposition to HB 1024? Please come ahead, Ms. Haney. And if you could speak into the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Stacey Haney again on behalf of the School Boards Association. We are opposed. Actually, I can't see the substitute yet online, so I can't speak directly to the substitute. But based on the explanation, we're still opposed to the bill, and our concern is with siphoning money away from public education, and it causes some serious concerns for us, and so we would ask that you not act favorably on it.
Thank you. You can leave that there.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Smith.
Madam Chair, member of the subcommittee, Tom Smith with the Superintendent's Association. In addition to the concern expressed by VSBA, this is the way, and I haven't seen the sub, so I don't know if he's changed any of these specifics, but it's a significant unfunded mandate to localities to administer this. Localities, local school boards would be required to handle the invoicing, auditing. It would impact some of their local their local amount they would pay for things like lottery funds. They would not be getting any money for it the way it was originally described, and I assume it hasn't changed. Typically, if a child is not there, the Board of Supervisors, City Council doesn't give you money for it from the local share. But so we've got very much concern. We do notice that there is a budget amendment in the House side for the state, but we have not seen any monies at the local level. From being a small rural division, the finance department, I had an accounts payable clerk, a payroll clerk, and me as superintendent. So this would be an extreme burden if we were supposed to do this without any kind. But also we are concerned about the voucher piece of it.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Again, my name is Kenneth Gilliam, Policy Director of New Virginia Majority, and we strongly oppose the bill. As previously stated, this bill will allow public dollars to also be used to fund things for families to send their students to private schools, for example. We believe it's especially not prudent to do so at a time where we have not fully funded our standards, our SOQ recommendations for the Virginia Board of Education, have not fully lifted the arbitrary cap on school support positions, have not fully provided the funding needed for our ELL students in our classrooms, in addition to ensuring that our teacher pay for our teachers across the Commonwealth is at or above the national average. And for those reasons and many more, we oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair Committee, Vicki Kitts with the Virginia Education Association. We are opposed to any measure that seeks to take away funding from public education. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee?
If I may.
Yes, Delegate.
So first and foremost, in reacting to concerns expressed by one of the speakers, we have moved the administration of this from the local school district and place it with the Department of Education and the Treasury for reasons stated, not wanting to bring an unfunded mandate on the schools. Just kind of jumping up to the highest level, I understand that what I'll call the more established people representing the more established public schools see this as a threat. It is not a threat. It would introduce a level of competition that where it has been tried, it elevates the quality of education, not only of the students that participate, but of the public schools. There is not a lot of accountability in public schools for the academic outcomes that come forward from the students in those schools. A little bit of competition would clearly raise all ships, as they say. This would provide some degree of mobility for people who are trapped potentially in a failing school. That would benefit those people, and I think, again, the worst case is this would be very successful. Or excuse me, best case is, worst case from the standpoint of a public school would be that something comes in and competes and shows that the work could be done, the outcomes should be better. The best case is many people would participate in this and we would see the outcomes that have been demonstrated in other areas where there's a significant improvement in educational outcomes. That's the purpose of the bill. Again, this isn't a trial of ESAs other beyond what has been tried in Arizona and Florida and a few other states where there's been outstanding outcomes. And we're hoping that the committee will allow that to take place in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Is there a motion on the floor?
Second.
Substitute motion.
Substitute motion.
To PBI. Second.
The substitute motion is in front of us to PBI. All in favor? Aye. So 3 ayes, 2 noes. That will be the recommendation presented next Thursday.
Thank you to you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee.
Thank you, Delegate. And I saw Delegate Greenhaw enter first. Am I correct?
Yes, Greenhaw.
Okay, please come ahead. And you have just one bill, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is HB 873.
Yes, and there is a substitute. I have 4 copies.
Do we have a motion on the substitute?
Still moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any, all in favor of this, accepting the substitute? Aye. The substitute is now in front of us. We have copies, Delegate, of the substitute. Thank you.
Sorry. I try to be prepared.
You can present your bill. And before you start, I will say that we heard public testimony before you got here when you were still on the floor, so we won't be taking any additional public testimony.
Okay. Well, thank you, ma'am. So thank you, Madam Chair, members, for allowing me to speak. The purpose of this bill is to make a school resource officer available for every school to make our schools and students safe. This bill will require each school board to enter into a collaborative agreement with local law enforcement agencies for the purpose of assigning school resource officers to each public elementary and secondary school in the school division. However, the Board of Education may grant a waiver to allow the sharing of a school resource officer between multiple schools within a division. School boards are further required to have a memorandum of understanding with law enforcement agencies that define the powers of the school resource officers based on the model memorandum of understanding developed by the Virginia Center for School and Campus Safety. And these memorandum of understanding will be published at each school division website. This bill requires the memoranda of understanding to be reviewed or affirmed at least every 2 years or at the request of any party. And during the review process, each school board must ensure the public will have the ability, the opportunity to comment. And this bill states that school division superintendents must certify in writing to the Department of Education that the school board has met the requirements as stated. Most school districts currently have resource officers, but this bill will ensure that the localities who do not would make a school resource officer available to the public school students. And you probably earlier heard the list of 13 who do not have any school resource officers. And there's currently funding in the amount of $25,800,000 for fiscal year 23 and for 24 included in this budget.
Thank you, Delegate. Senator?
I would just mention it's not included in the Senate budget.
I'm sorry that
It's not included in the Senate budget. There's money available for a variety of possible choices by local governments.
Thank you. Are there any other questions by committee members?
I have a question.
Yes, Senator.
Delegate, for those localities that do not wish to have SRO, your legislation would now require that they do, even if they don't want to?
Well, it says that the Department of Education will work with the localities. They can share. For instance, when we first started working on this bill, I found that in several communities they had, say, schools sharing a building, like elementary and middle together, or very close together, on other sides of a parking lot. And so we quickly got an agreement that they, would be able to get a waiver to share a resource officer.
That's not my question.
I'm sorry.
My question is, if the school does not wish to have an SRO, does your legislation now require that they do?
It doesn't require that they do. They can work with the department and have the schools share, so they would have control over where the resource officers would go and what their responsibilities would be. We've made it as flexible as possible.
If I could, I'm sorry. So we've heard that some school divisions do not want to have any SROs, and that they've actually opted out. At this point, it is a local decision to be made, and they are not choosing to have an SRO present. Instead, they are using those funds now for mental health counselors and to support students who may be in distress emotionally and behaviorally, to address those issues through mental health counseling services. So I think Senator Locke's question is, what is the impact of your proposed legislation if a school division decides not to have an SRO?
Well, the way it's written, there's actually no penalty. There's no penalty if they choose to not have the SROs. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the substitution. I know y'all have been very busy today. But the intent of the bill is to try and have each school have an SRO. But if they don't, there is no penalty. There's no financial penalty.
So, Delegate, aren't we already in the present situation that every school division has the option to employ an SRO? What is the need for your bill then?
Well, it's the goal, but of course it's still up to each locality. So if And there was a recent study done, a Watson study, 70% of Virginians do want SROs in their schools. We're just trying to make sure that they have that opportunity, and which is why we even have the funding.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator.
Delegate, your bill, as it came out of the House and in the House budget, actually funds these positions. Is that correct?
Yes, it does. It is intended to fund.
And no, I understand, Madam Chair, that's not in the Senate budget currently. And we heard from some prior testimony that some schools might have had it because they couldn't afford it or they wanted to spend the money elsewhere. Is that your understanding?
Yes, because when I spoke with as many delegates across the state as I could to find out why they didn't have SROs, it was typically explained to me that they simply couldn't afford them. So we had actually given the option of SSOs, which would be less expensive, so that we could fund more. And so this is what we've come down to.
Madam Chair, then thanks.
Senator, please go ahead.
The reason that they don't have them is because they don't have the money for them. Is that what you found?
Yes, sir, in most cases.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Senator, please go ahead.
I don't know who you're talking to, which delegates you're talking to across the state who want them, but I can assure you that in my part of the state, they're not popular, they're not universally wanted, and people would rather spend the money on something else.
Senator Peake.
And this is the issue that I have, Delegate, why I appreciate your bill. I know that there's a concern with school resource officers as far as school discipline, but people have forgotten, and it shocks me that just several years back with the rush and rash of school shootings that we had, and that they would not want a school resource officer, and we've had bills to arm teachers, and teachers are not allowed to be armed currently in the Commonwealth, that we would not want someone, a school resource officer, to protect our students at every school when we have seen the lunatics that are out there and approach schools. And it's my understanding that your bill would fund those protective officers at each school in the Commonwealth. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Madam Chair, and would your bill require that these people be trained so that they would know how to respond if someone were to come at the school armed, attempting to shoot someone at the school?
Certainly, yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Howell.
I just want to point out that we have elected school boards in this state, and if the people in a locality want them, they can get them, but those that don't should have the option to do what the local school board thinks right.
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Which is why there is actually no penalty if they choose to not.
Then what's the point of the bill?
Well, because it's our hope to make it available to every school district that.
I think, Delegate, part of our confusion is that option is already available to every school district. Should they want to have an SRO, they already have that capability, and many schools already are employing SROs. And I think the primary purpose of SROs, as we've seen in many school divisions, is for school discipline. It's the use of SROs for students who are facing mental, emotional, behavioral challenges rather than preventing outside shooters. And so that has been largely the case of the use of SROs. We've heard testimony that a lot of times as young folks who are facing these challenges or are developmentally delayed, that they are the primary students who come under the disciplinary purposes of the SRO. So those are some of the concerns that a lot of school divisions have shared with me, parents have shared with me, I know. But every school division has that option. So Senator Locke, you want to make a final comment?
Yes. Madam Chair, on page 4, lines 87 through 92, it specifies that each school board shall enter into a collaborative agreement. and that the division superintendent shall certify in writing to the department that the school board has met this requirement no later than August 31st of each year. So that is an indication that this is not optional for the division to enter into this agreement, that they have to do it. Is that not correct?
Well, may I respond? I don't know how strict you are. I'm trying very hard to follow.
Yes, Delegate, please respond.
Thank you. But there is no penalty in the legislation.
When you have the prescriptive shall, that means they have no option. It's not a may, it's a shall. And so that means every school division must comply. Now, I'm not sure what the penalty is. The penalty has been stricken, I understand, from the original bill. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion on the floor?
I move that we recommend PBI.
Second.
It's been moved and recommended that we pass by indefinitely. Recommend that next week. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 3 to 2 to PBI. Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Davis, please come. And we are taking a look at HB 127, and that is the only bill in front of us. Is that correct for you?
I think you may have two, Madam Chair. I think it's 127, and I believe it is 340, Madam Chair.
340, okay. Yes, you're right. Well, let's go ahead and hear about 127, and while you were on the floor, we did hear public testimony for and against this bill.
Wonderful, I appreciate it. So House Bill 127, as you have in front of you, deals with our governor schools. The purpose of this bill is twofold. One, to ensure race-blind admissions into our governor schools, and the purpose of that is to make sure we don't hide the issue I think that's been plaguing admissions into our governor schools, and that is the lack of equity and resources at the middle school level when it comes to the student population. I think we've all talked for years about the problem is the pipeline. We need a stronger, diverse pipeline, but because of actions for decades, and I think some would even say centuries, whether it be redlining, whether it be where broadband was first built to, whether it be challenges inherently into certain parts of the area, some communities have been left behind, and you don't find equity in the resources or the education taught at the middle school level that allows a level playing field for every child to be able to apply and not only get into some of our governor schools, but also to succeed in our governor schools. So what this does first is it says that there shall not be any discrimination based on race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin when it comes to admission into the school. And then if you go down to the very bottom, it also mandates that each local school board that jointly manages and controls a regional academic year governor school shall collaborate to ensure that each public middle school that is eligible to send students to attend as such governor school offer coursework, curriculum, and instruction that is comparable in content and rigor in order to provide each student in each middle school with the opportunity to gain admission and to excel. That's the goal of this legislation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there questions for the patron? I think we have a question.
Delegate Davis, what is it about this legislation that values diversity?
So I think it's the legislation that respects diversity. I think a lot of stuff has happened where we have not provided the resources at the elementary and middle school levels to create the diversity that would be expected and that I think we should demand in our governor schools. And this bill creates that, well, it demands that equity in the elementary and middle schools so we get the diversity that we want to see. I think it's too easy for us to look at a governor school and say there's not enough black students, or there's not enough Asian students, or pick the students that not enough females, and I think that's the cop-out. I think what we've really uncovered is the pipeline was not given equitable access to resources. So not only could they not, get accepted in some cases, but they're not prepared to succeed. And I think that's the real shame, is having been and worked with the school to create an IB program for students that 49% free and reduced lunches. There's additional wraparound services that are necessary to help them catch up because resources were not given in their middle schools as they came through. Some of our governor schools don't have those wraparound resources, and I think we need to make sure that we provide those resources at the middle school level to make sure that they not only get accepted but also succeed.
Isn't this legislation ignoring federal law?
How so?
That is, there's a Supreme Court affirmation that school boards may pursue the goal of bringing together students of diverse backgrounds and races through other means that are race conscious but do not lead to different treatment.
Senator, I would mention I'm not an attorney, to my knowledge, and under significant scrutiny in the House that has never popped up, and I would be more than happy to look into that, because that would be concerning if this would be unconstitutional, and to my knowledge it's not, but I can't speak from an attorney.
The specific Supreme Court case was parents involved in schools versus Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question is this not also ignoring the ability of local school boards to make the decisions about entry requirements for their schools?
Madam Chair and Senator, I would say I think it's because of the flexibility we've given some local school boards that we have the lack of diversity, that we have the achievement gap that we see today in Virginia. What classes are allowed to exist at different schools is decided upon our local school boards. They decide that certain advanced classes will be at this middle school, but not at that middle school. And having gone to a school that did not have the same number of AP classes as other schools not that far away, a student can't help but feel that there's a reason that those classes aren't offered, because I'm not that smart enough, or I don't go to the right school and we're not capable. And I think it's those practices that have hurt the attitude, the positive attitude, the appreciation of self, and honestly created the lack of diversity that we see in our governor schools. So I do tremendously respect our local school boards, but I do believe that their decisions to not have equity and equality in some of those middle schools have got us where we are today, and I think we need to address that.
One last question, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Because of some of the changes that and a input from several stakeholders over the course of the last year, many of the governor schools made significant changes in their admissions in terms of actually diversifying more than they had in many, many years. And there has not been, and I know that there was some opposition to that. And one of the things that we tend to hear is that if we admit more Hispanic students, if we admit more black students, somehow if you black and brown the governor schools, that's going to lower the standards. But that hasn't happened. Right. And does this legislation not move us back to where we were prior to the changes that have been made at these governor schools?
Madam Chair and Senator, I appreciate the question. When we had this bill in the House, everyone that testified, and I can't speak to the testimony here today, but everyone that testified from TJ or the governor school said they don't do that today, that they don't discriminate by race. They are race blind. They don't take race into account. So I would first suggest or say that it doesn't take us backwards because supposedly they're not using this, and I would argue nor should they. But the second thing, and what scares me the most, Senator, is we shouldn't pride ourselves or pat ourselves on the back because we increase diversity at a governor's school. I think, when you put students into a place, what we should pride ourselves on is not only do they get in, but they are immensely successful there. And the success isn't based on them getting in. The success is based on them having the same resources to be as prepared as that student next to them. And that's what I'm trying to get through with this legislation, is since they don't discriminate by race today, this just codifies that. And to make sure that every child is... We had a debate on the floor, and one day one of my colleagues said it's about equity of access, and then I think he said equity of resources. And then he caught himself and he said, well, we need equity of access. I would suggest that equity of access is no good without equity of resources to be prepared and to be successful. And I think if we create equity of resources, we will inherently have equity of access and success.
Senator Howell.
You just started touching on what I was underlining and wanted to ask you about. If every child is going to go, if every middle school student who could go to a governor's school is going to be in a school that offers coursework, curriculum, and instruction that's comparable in content and rigor, in order to provide each student in each middle school with the opportunity to gain admission, where's the money? What's in your budget that would pay for this? Because my understanding is there's very little additional money for education.
Madam Chair and Senator, I would say that there's a cost for every class that a school board puts out there. And I would say that there should probably be some reexamination. I can't tell you that there would be no fiscal impact to a locality, but what I can tell you, what I believe is far worse, is that they're letting students fail. Some of our best and brightest students, that when you go into those schools and you talk about geography and you know they're brilliant, but you also know what the odds of them succeeding are based on their zip code. Not because they can't do it, but because it's based on their zip code and what classes they have available to them. And also what you're telling that child in middle school, where they can't take some of these advanced classes or the same rigor of the class is not offered. And we've all been students, and not all of us have gone to the top schools in our area. And I think that is detrimental. So I can't tell you what the inherent cost is to our school board, but I can tell you what that cost is to a child. And I think we need to get on top of that and make sure every child has that same chance to feel the same sense of pride, the same sense of ability, and the opportunity to succeed.
I don't disagree with you with that aspiration. I wish it were the case across the Commonwealth and even within certain school districts where there's disparate treatment.
Delegate, I think your heart is absolutely in the right place as you're seeking to increase opportunity, especially to these governor school programs. But you said something that caught my attention, that everyone who spoke in the House committee stressed the fact that they don't discriminate by race. And absolutely, we would hope that there's no discrimination by race. But I think that's a very different statement to say we don't discriminate by race than to say that we are seeking to diversify our student population. And from what I've heard from our governor schools, their leadership and the surrounding communities, and from the alumni, frankly, the alumni have been really outspoken on this issue. What they are seeking is to have increased diversity within these schools, and that's a different proposition than to say we're not discriminating by race, and that would be unlawful should such discrimination occur. And in fact, what we've heard now with the new admissions process that has been put into place at some of our governor schools, that there is increased diversity on issues of geography, socioeconomic status, gender, race, ethnicity. All of these are enriching the experience of our students. We live in a global society. It's absolutely essential that all of our students get the opportunity to experience the richness of the diverse communities that they are going to be interacting with on a global stage. One of my concerns is with this definition, is the term proxy discrimination. I'm not sure I fully understand it, but it seems that under the rubric of proxy discrimination would fall that localities it's going to be blind to localities and the feeder schools that come into the governor schools. That's problematic on funding levels, basically, too, because we know that our I know here in Central Virginia, we've got Chesterfield, Henrico, Richmond City, Powhatan, Hanover. They all feed into the Central Virginia Governor School, but it's also part of the funding model for the Governor School. So if we're going to be blind in terms of accepting schools, accepting students from these localities, then doesn't that disrupt the whole funding model as well?
Madam Chair, that's a great question, and that's why we wrote lines 27 and 28 the way we did, because Maggie Walker, I think, is a prime example of what you speak to, where it's multiple localities come together and they have a certain number of seats that each locality has. And so what this says is that no governing board member, director, administrator shall discriminate. But it allows localities to still have their number of seats, and you can have a number of individuals come from each of those localities, and they can actually be chosen by those individual localities. So it still protects Maggie Walker. It still protects the ability of having students from multiple different localities that feed into a governor school. We have to protect that. And I do appreciate they are growing their diversity, and you're right, from my understanding as well. They're not doing it by discriminating on race, so we're not going to make anything what they're doing illegal if they're not discriminating by race. And I would just mention Senator Peterson has reached out to me on this, and he's putting together an amendment for that first section on discrimination by race that he thinks kind of makes things a little bit simpler, so I have not seen it yet, but just for y'all's edification. But the thing that concerns me the most, the metric we should be tracking is not our diversity in our governor schools. It is how well our students of all ethnicities, of all races, of all sexes are prepared, and how much we encourage them to apply to those governor schools. Why isn't someone going through all these governor schools and urging more minority students to apply, more black students, more Hispanic? Why aren't they going and saying, you can do this? There's a reason why that pipeline is what it is. That pipeline isn't as diverse as it should be. And that's what this gets to. The minute that we see artificial diversity, and I say artificial diversity at a governor school because it's putting people in there, and maybe some succeed and maybe some have challenges, but we didn't prepare them for that like we prepared every other student. The minute we have that artificial diversity, it makes it blind to the real symptoms that we have. And that is there are still significant communities that do not have the same resources as other communities right down the road. And so that's what this bill does. It says we're not going to have artificial diversity. We're going to make sure we get in that pipeline, and we're going to urge every child to go and apply this, let them know that they can do it. And we're going to give them the same curriculum to have that rigor, because I think we all remember that first tough class we all took. And the last place, you want to be able to be challenged before you walk into a governor school, just like we all need to be challenged before we walked into college. And this ensures it happens.
Senator.
Delegate Davis, I don't disagree with you on the preparation for the pipeline in order to get to the governor's school, but it doesn't do any good to say that if the preparation and the resources aren't there for that pipeline school.
Yes, ma'am.
So we can say that easily, but if we are not going to have the resources there for that middle school that feeds into Maggie Walker, or that feeds into TJ, or that feeds into the governor's school that's in Norfolk, then, we're just whistling Dixie.
Yes, ma'am.
Because if we're not going to have the money and the other resources for those pipeline schools, for the children that need it, then there's still not going to be the diversity that we need for those governor schools.
Ma'am, I would agree with you 100%. And I would tell you that I think there's a number of ways to address this. First, we have teachers, we have classes. I don't think making classes that are already being taught more rigorous and challenging to the same level of others inherently have additional cost. Now, having the same types of curriculum, maybe there is a challenge there, but maybe that is having students be able to take a class at the middle school down the road for that particular class. I may not have the answers, but I know there's a solution. And what concerns me more than a few extra dollars from the school board having to cover this is that next generation we're losing. There are kids in middle school today, and they're going to be out of middle school in a couple of years. And will they be given that same chance to succeed as some of us may have had and others behind them? And the more we go back and forth on is there money or is there not money, the more students we lose. This forces that to come up with a solution, and maybe it's a couple extra dollars, and maybe it's just that class in middle school that you really want a student to take to prepare for their entrance into a governor school. If they so desire to go that route, and not all middle school students may want to go that route, they have a chance to go take it. Maybe it's a virtual that they can do inside there because these students are very excelled and very disciplined, or maybe they go there for that class a couple times a week. I may not have the answer, but we're leaving way too many kids behind. And I think there's a solution, but unless we put something on paper that requires it, we're never going to find it.
Delegate, one of the issues and serious concerns I have is with the admissions process. I know our schools have been going through quite an extensive study and research on how to best create an admissions process that is much more in tune to the way that students, gifted students in particular, reveal their aptitudes, their skills, their talents, their capabilities. If you reduce the admissions process to numbers, to grades, to a standardized test, that really impacts the opportunity to engage so many wonderful, talented students. Our school systems, our governor schools, have gone to a much more holistic approach to the admissions process, looking at the whole student and their creativity, their imagination, the challenges that they are able to bring with them into the system and what they will contribute and offer to their peer group. I think that's a much better way to approach. It's a much more thoughtful way to approach how we include students and expand opportunities. And as I had said earlier, this new admissions process has actually increased the talent. It's increased the success of students. It's increased grades. It's doing really well, and it's just a recent change. I would like to see us continue in that and see what we're able to develop out of this process.
And I will tell you, your concern is similar to my concern. So when we defined traditional academic success factors, and you're talking to someone who massive ADHD, did not do on any of those standardized exams, and I was not getting into any governor school, not a chance in the world. But so that's why we define this not just as test results, and obviously that's only one factor, but the extracurricular activities and achievements that are also relevant, because like you said, there's so many extracurricular activities. The fact that a student's working that part-time job after school, that should be taken into account, because there's so much that comes from that, the dedication that a student has to do that. The academic recommendations by teachers, to uncover unique other scenarios. So we wanted to make it broad. We did not want to limit it just to standardized test scores. We want it to be the holistic view of that child, and that's why we opened it up to this as well.
Thank you, Delegate.
No problem.
Okay. Are there any other comments from committee members?
I just have
Yes, Senator.
It's not, kind of sort of a question. There is a pending lawsuit out of Fairfax County with regard to TJ. does that have any kind of impact on what you're trying to do here?
From my understanding, Senator, no. This is solely about from my understanding, and I'm happy to double check on this as well because I'm not an attorney and have not been asked, but I did hear there was something, but that is not, all this says is that it has to be race neutral, which according to all accounts that we've heard, and y'all probably heard today, it is. So it probably has nothing to do with that. And then the making sure that there's equity and resources at middle school, and that has nothing to do with that lawsuit. I know that for certain. So I would not expect so, but I'm happy to double check.
Okay, that raised another one. In terms of equity and resources in middle schools, is there funding available for that? I know that there's nothing in the Senate budget.
Madam Chair, and so there is not money in the budget to give more money to the middle schools to do this, but I would say that this sometimes is as simple as taking a course that maybe was dumbed down in a middle school because they didn't want to challenge the children and thought that not enough students would sign up to take a more difficult or rigorous course, and saying, let's make it more difficult, let's make it more rigorous, let's make it more challenging. I think that there is a lot of things that these middle schools can do that will not cost another dime. It's just they have to believe in these kids. I mean, then that's the problem. I think that there's this this bigotry, low expectations that still exists today and has for a century, and it needs to stop. And so a lot of what can be done isn't a cost. It's not standing up another class. It's just teaching it the same way with the same rigor you teach it down the road. And maybe there is a class or two that should be. And I would say that having come from local government, and we all know how local government works, there probably is some additional funds, but there's not. I think there's ways around it to do it, whether taking it at another middle school. But the thing that gets me the most is that these kids don't stop their education while we try to figure it out. And we have sent more things down to our local school systems without money, and they figured it out when it was a law. They came up with a solution. When they have to, they do, but they're not going to do it unless we tell them they have to. And when it comes to the future of a child, I think that's one of the things we probably should tell them that they have to do.
Senator, any additional questions? Senator Peake, any questions? Okay. I'll just make one final comment. I think we have to start sooner than middle school. By middle school, it's too late. And if we're talking about admission to these governor schools, they're discriminate, and I'm using the word discriminate in terms of creating pathways at the third grade, starting in third grade, when students are selected to go into accelerated or double accelerated math. And if you miss that opportunity in third grade, you're disqualified from the governor school, because that you really need to be double accelerated. So it's very, very difficult to identify talented children at that age, and if that is one of the qualifying factors, it's quite a barrier for our minority communities, especially if they don't have parents to advocate for them. So I just wanted to add that comment. Is there a motion on the floor for this bill?
Move to report.
Is there a second?
I have, yes. Dr. Donovan seconds.
Is she still on campus?
Yeah, I think she's presenting.
Okay.
At House Bill.
I was just teasing. That's what she told you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we recommend reporting of the bill. All in favor?
Aye. And aye.
All opposed?
No, I can't right now.
No.
Yes, ma'am.
3 to 2, and we will share that at the committee meeting next Thursday.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have one more bill?
Yes, ma'am. Let me go to that. I think we are
HB 340, and that is concerning alternative pathways to the Advanced Studies Diploma. And Delegate, we did hear quite a few folks testify in opposition to the bill. And we will not take any more public testimony, but would love to hear your perspectives.
Sure. Thank you so much. This is a bill that I've been pushing for years and trying to find numerous ways. And I'll tell you that in no way does this bill mean to imply that taking advanced robotics or manufacturing or computer is the same as taking a world language. We all know that's not the case. What this does is allow students the chance to get out from underneath the stigma that exists as they try to take advanced coursework in these other, what I think we all would agree, course loads, whether it be advanced manufacturing, computer science, and robotics, etc. Today, there's one major difference between an advanced diploma and a standard diploma, and that's 3 years of a foreign language or 2 years of two. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, there's another social studies course, but that's not a big deal. But you have students that want to come out and go right into that workforce. They want to come out with the advanced CTE credits or these advanced skills that we all talk about. But the problem is, in many cases, if they use those electives to do so, they don't get the advanced diploma. And immediately they got that stigma that they're not advanced. It doesn't matter that they took advanced coursework that I think we all could agree is just as advanced as taking a foreign language, but they cannot have that advanced diploma. So what this does is it says that there shall be two pathways to the advanced diploma. One of them would require the coursework in a world language, but not require coursework in the CTE fields. The other pathway would be one that requires advanced coursework in the CTE fields, but not coursework in the world languages. So when they graduate, having taken advanced courses in one direction or the other, they can have that advanced diploma. And that's all this bill does, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate.
I mean, we're going to tie 1-to-1.
I have two proxies. So I have the power. Any questions, Senator Peake?
I don't.
Okay. I know I'm not going to do justice to the comments in opposition that were made, but I think one of the comments that really struck me is that even in these, in the CTE fields in particular, our students are going to need another skill set in language. As our societies become much more global, as students are interacting as they move into their careers with a host of individuals from a variety of countries, whether they're in manufacturing, technology, so many other professions. Not having that skill in another language is actually going to be quite a handicap on our students. And as someone who is bilingual, I'll just share, it is such an enriching opportunity to be able to think and appreciate the world in two languages. And I think of that often when I'm driving in my car, and sometimes I'm listening to a song from another language. And it's just a different way to experience the world. And that limitation of just one language, there are some concepts that cannot even be translated. And so if you can't translate that concept into your native language, you only live in sometimes a one-dimensional world because you don't have those opportunities to understand untranslatable experiences. I think we need more language in our schools. I think we need to start early in elementary school. The brain development has shown that if you don't start teaching children when they're very young, language acquisition is quite a challenge, especially after puberty. I want to enrich our students and our school programs with more languages, so I am going to be in opposition to this bill for that reason.
Well, so it's interesting. So I agree with you 100%. I think we need more languages. I think there's tremendous value for people to be bilingual. I'll tell you, for my nephew, at an early age, his mother and father moved out to Germany. They didn't put him in a school on base. They put him in a German school. And in Germany, of course, you learn German because that's their native language. You have to learn English, so he learned English. Then you have to learn another language, so he learned Spanish. He came back fluent in 3 languages in 9th grade. Like you said, the younger you are, you pick them up. Madam Chair, I took 5 years of Spanish. I have Spanish in 5th grade at Gifted and Talented. Had another year at 7th grade. I took 3 years in high school. I am not bilingual. I'm not fluent. I don't have everything that I would have to do If I were to go and be one of these international, people in the trades, I cannot do. My 5 years, I can ask for where the bathroom is and a number of things, but I'm definitely not fluent. And so I agree. And it's interesting, if we start early, I've got the credits available for the CTE classes, but we're talking about students. Many of them are not going out of high school straight into college. They're going out of high school into a skilled trade, into skill sets that we know we need and we've talked about together for years: robotics, manufacturing, computer science. They have no desire, nor the majority of them will not be traveling internationally. And if they so desire, they can go to school and they can go and they can pick up the languages. But you can't tell me that 3 years of a foreign language gives them the skill set to be able to go overseas and converse. But what I can tell you is that 3 years of advanced manufacturing out of high school has a student walking out into a $70,000 to $100,000 a year job. And what I don't want them to be is have the stigma of being stupid because they can't get the advanced diploma. That's what we're talking about. What really is here is there, under any pathway, should a student be considered advanced if he doesn't have a foreign language or she does not have a foreign language? And if the answer is yes, let's create it. But what we're saying right now is what we said when I was in school and our parents were in school, which is you're not an advanced student unless you speak a foreign language. Never mind speak it, because I still can't speak it. Unless you take 3 years of a foreign language, you're not advanced. Regardless if you can code, regardless if you can run advanced manufacturing, regardless if you're the biggest master welder you've ever seen in your life, you're not an advanced student. And that's the stigma I'm trying to get rid of. And I'm not saying that foreign languages are not valuable, and I think you spoke more eloquently than I could about the importance of it. What I am saying is create another pathway so that the students that want to go that route can, the ones that want to go the CTE route can, and I think you're right. I think you'll find very many students that somehow find that pathway to get both seals. And they'll come out with the CTE advanced, and they'll come out with that seal for world languages. But let's give them the option.
Thank you, Delegate. You make a very strong case, and I think the one point of difference that we have is that you see the need for world language for the individual that travels overseas, that goes internationally to work and so forth. I see the need for languages right here in Virginia, in the Commonwealth. I'll share an experience. I was at a mall recently here in Henrico County. I didn't hear a word of English, but I did hear 10 other languages being spoken. We have that diverse global community right here, and I think it's imperative for us to enrich our students' experiences with world languages, and especially with the people who are going to be interacting in so many different professions with folks from around the world. But you make a very strong case. I certainly understand what your perspective is on this.
Madam Chair.
Senator Peake.
Yes, Delegate Davis, thank you. I had 4 or 5 years of French in high school. I can't remember which, and it is irrelevant because I can't speak it. And I have a daughter who majored in French and spent a year abroad, and a son who majored in Latin and Greek. But we can't set the HVAC, cool, heat, timer in our house on either floor. I would much rather have a kid who could weld something together, fix my heating and air, or change the tank in my toilet. But we can't do any of those things. So I pay somebody a boatload of money an hour to come fix my toilet, if I can find anybody, but I can't right now because we got 2 that are leaking because they are too busy, and we're trying to get somebody to do drywall, and they're 4 months down the road. So they are every bit as advanced as a kid who can speak a foreign language or take it. So I like your bill.
Thank you.
Senator,
I think Senator Locke does too.
Senator Peake, maybe if you could read those instruction manuals in French, Portuguese, Russian, then you would be able to take care of your household problems. So we have a motion to report and a second from Senator Donovan. All in favor?
Aye and aye.
2 ayes, and I am going to vote no, and I'm assuming Howell and Locke vote no, but we will let them share that in full committee next week.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for passionate defenses of your bill. You've made it quite an engaging conversation.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen who are here, I know we have we had just two other bills, and I just wanted to give opportunity if somebody has waited this long. We have a bill by Delegate Ransom, HB 1034, and by Delegate Batten, HB 1093. Was there anybody here waiting to speak to either of those bills? Am I correct, staff, that those are the only two bills that we didn't? I'm sorry? I think those are the only two we had left. Okay, is there anyone here to speak to HB 1034, Delegate Ransom's bill? Yes, on the supportive side.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Members.
Please speak into the microphone.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference, and we support Delegate Ransom's bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Waited this long, I might as well go ahead and speak.
And I'm
Todd Gack
sorry.
on behalf of the Family Foundation. We support this bill. I think it covers an issue that parents really do need to be involved, given some of the topics that can be discussed with counselors. So, yes, we do support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In support? In opposition? Okay, we'll hear opposition then.
Madam Chair, and members of the subcommittee, David Bailey here on behalf of Virginia School Counselor Association. The message from the Counselor Association is the code already requires parental consent for school counseling services. We have talked with the patron in the House and suggested that perhaps if she wanted to make the bill be one that would have the department develop guidelines for the provision of counseling services and getting them all in one place, that might be a good Section 1 bill. But the bill as it is, we oppose the bill.
Okay.
No need for it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Senator Peake, Ricky Getz with the Virginia Education Association, we oppose this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Stacey Haney with the School Board Association. We also have concerns with the bill and certainly don't want to, we're concerned that it would have the effect of limiting a child's access to needed counseling services.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Senator Peake, did you want to comment on the bill?
Actually, yeah. Well, Ms. Haney, how's it going to limit it?
Trying to be quick.
I know. I would, and
We're all hungry, Senator
I am
Peake.
too. Yeah.
Senator. So I think that, I mean, it depends on what the guidelines say. So some of that is to be determined depending on what these guidelines say. But I think that there's a possibility for having some structure or some limitations on. There could be students who need counseling, whose parents are not supportive of a student, and so those students still.
So is it your concern is the requiring parental consent before getting counseling? Is that the issue?
If I could answer, it seems that this legislation would create procedures by which a parent may limit or prohibit his child's participation, and that is concerning to me as well, especially if you're a child who's facing a situation of domestic abuse or sexual abuse within the household, to not have that ability to seek out professional counseling within a safe environment would be very concerning.
And that's the, Madam Chair, that's the parental consent portion of it. Is that correct?
That's right.
For the most part. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The final bill then is HB 1093, Delegate Battens, and this is requiring an evaluation of each public school teacher, principal, division superintendent to include an evaluation of cultural competency if the relevant school board has adopted and implemented policies. So anybody wanting to speak in support of this legislation? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this legislation?
Madam Chair. Stacey Haney again with School Board Association. We have a concern with the second part of the bill, and it's, I'll give you the line numbers. It's at the end, well, line 76 to 78. What those lines do is it says that school boards can adopt and implement policies only after providing 30 days advance written notice and holding a public hearing regarding the adoption and implementation of such policies. I mean, when school boards adopt policies under FOIA, we have to do it in a public meeting that's open to the public, but nowhere else in the code am I aware where we require school boards to have a public hearing regarding the adoption of a policy. We adopt policies in public meetings all the time, but it's just an additional requirement that I don't think we see anywhere else in the code, and so that's our concern with it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Vicki Kitts with the Virginia Education Association. We're opposed this because we believe that all of our teachers and school personnel should be informed and culture competent to deal with their students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Peak, any questions, comments?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your patience and your endurance.
That's one. We didn't even finish.
We did finish.
Well, I mean, it depends on my mood. Sometimes I want